Okay, we're right at 2 o'clock, so I'd like to call the March, it's the 15th, right?
14.
14th.
Pretty close though.
Okay. Okay, so I'd like to call the March 14th meeting of the 14 Mile Watershed Alliance to order. Barb on the right would do a roll call, please.
We're here, right here.
Phil Rockenbach.
Dave Trudeau.
Karen Knotek.
Terry Wiesner.
Okay, everybody should have received minutes from our February 14th, 2022 meeting.
Oops.
And so other than that little glitch on the minutes, any corrections, additions, discussions? If not, I'd accept the motion to approve those minutes.
Motion to approve it.
Motion by Jerry and second by Phil. Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Announcements. I'd like to introduce Dave Kuehler. Clearly. Close enough.
Everybody. Hey, Dave, welcome aboard.
Dave has been very active in some of the conservation projects around here. He helps Lake Sherwood. He put in fish sticks, even though he's not a Lake Sherwood resident. He's jumped on board to help with stream testing. And because of his active involvement and background, we've invited Dave to join our group and be another board member. So with that, I'd like to welcome Dave on board and invite you to come up and take a seat up front with us. And then if you just briefly tell us just a little bit about your background and what got you interested in the group here.
All right, so I just retired. I retired in January from a adhesives company, Plastic Adhesives in Milwaukee. I've been a resident up here for about 10 years. We had a house and on the golf course, on the Lake River golf course. But my interest in this group basically started when my wife has been involved with some of the 14 Mile events in the past because she's the board liaison for Lake Arrowhead to this group. So that was kind of my initial interest. And then when the call for testing came out, I was like, that's something that's kind of right up my alley since I have a country background and things. So that kind of got the ball rolling and just kind of following along ever since.
Glad to have
Welcome
you. And just so everybody knows, they did help me man the booth at the Winter Farmers Market on Saturday,
All right,
on Friday.
I paid my penance for the year.
You did, you did, you did.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, I'd like to introduce our guest speaker for the day. Pat Oldenburg is going to probably give us an update on where things are at with the Wisconsin River Basin TMDL, probably give us a little bit of a refresh. And then where we've gone since we talked to him maybe a couple of years ago was the last time we had a in-depth dive into the TMDL. So welcome, Pat.
All right, thanks. So where should I be for all this to work?
Yeah, from first of all, I'll pull up your presentation.
Just sit right there at the table. Michael picked up your.
Okay.
Pick you up, John.
All right.
Okay. So if we'd like to do it, oh, hold on, sorry about this.
Flipping around.
There we go.
There we go.
Wonderful. All right, and then as we go, I will just advance your slide for you.
All
So
right.
just let me go next slide.
Okay. So yeah, it's been well, 2 years since I've been anywhere. At least professionally. We were on a, DNR, we were on a pretty tight lockdown, I guess I'll say, for being out in the public. So it's really glad, I'm really glad to to be out again and be able to meet with folks. And I'll see if I can remember how to actually talk in public, but not sure. So yeah, I guess, yeah, it just was asked to kind of give a little update of kind of what's been going on in the last few years, right? We've all kind of struggled through this COVID thing, and so just kind of want to give I guess I'll say a pretty high level overview of where things, what's happened, what's new, and then a little bit about, kind of where we're going in some directions at DNR. So next slide, or first slide, as it were. So I'm going to start out with probably the easiest thing to report on, and that is our municipal stormwater section, that sector. As you may remember from the TMDL, number of our large communities in the basin, such as Wausau, Stevens Point, Marshfield, Baraboo, et cetera, have stormwater permits that cover their municipal stormwater discharges. And under the TMDL, and their permit, they're supposed to report on their discharges. And basically, this spring is when we're going to get those first reports where they've looked at their communities, kind of redefined their mapping of the stormwater system, figuring out where do they stand relative to the TMDL requirements. And so that first report from those communities, that'll be due this spring. Probably, I believe in about, call it a month, basically about, I think about May, if I remember correctly. And so that's going to be coming. And then once they kind of give us that assessment, then by next spring, for those areas where they're not meeting the TMDL reduction goals based on kind of what they've already installed to date, they have to provide plans to say, okay, here's what we're going to do to meet those goals, in the coming years. So that's really where we're at with stormwater. We're kind of in that first phase still, if you will. Next slide. And wastewater program has been kind of trucking along throughout all of this. We're about roughly half of the permittees in the basin have received their permits based on the TMDL. And we're pretty much right on schedule with that in terms of when those permits expire and get renewed. If we look at how folks are approaching those limits for the that are going to come from the TMDL, they're most, by and large, sticking with kind of what we call as traditional brick and mortar approaches in terms of building additional treatment where needed at those treatment plants to meet their TMDL limits. There is a small number that are engaged in some watershed alternatives, looking at trading or adaptive management, but it's fairly limited. Probably, I think I counted about 3 or 4 within the basin right now, and we'll see how. I suspect that number will grow as we kind of cycle through the permits and more people get to figure out exactly what they're going to do regarding their wastewater treatment future. Another thing that I think we may have discussed in the past is Wisconsin's multi-discharger phosphorus variants. And as a refresher, well, I guess I'll go on a little bit into that, I guess, in the next slide, but about a quarter of the permittees in the basin are availing themselves of that alternative. So if you want to go to the next slide, under that approach for facilities, if they can't can't afford to meet their limits, they have really 2 alternatives. One is to do their own type of watershed project, kind of think of it like water quality trading, where they're going to go out and work one-on-one with a farmer to have that farmer reduce phosphorus on the farm versus at the wastewater treatment plant. But then there's also another alternative where basically for the amount of phosphorus that they are over a target value, they pay anywhere from $50 to $55 per pound, depending upon where their permit was issued. That $50 per pound number goes up with inflation. So, and that's, like I said, that's probably, there's a fair number of permittees that have used that option. And what that's resulted in is, in the last 4 years, an additional $850,000 in the Wisconsin River Basin to go towards non-point source activities. And the graph there just kind of shows how that bounces around a little bit from year to year. So in 2022, a number of counties within the basin will be receiving checks in various amounts to a total of almost $250,000. Every county in the basin isn't required to participate. We've had 5 counties that have participated every year. A couple of counties that have, one county has participated 3 years, and then I think another county that's participated 1. And so, yes, that's it's a nice influx of additional funds to get projects done in the basin, but it's still actually a fairly small amount in terms of what we spend on conservation on a yearly basis in Wisconsin. If we total up the DATCAP programs, the DNR programs, and the big one being NRCS programs, plus a few other things, we spend roughly about $89 million a year on conservation in the state. And so, $850,000. When we look at one year, that's pretty small. Actually, I think that number is wrong. I should say. Well, I'm sorry, it's because it's roughly about $1 million a year statewide is what we've got. This is just for the Wisconsin River Basin. That's why my 1% I was questioning my 1% there. Next slide, please.
Real quick, I'm just gonna pause.
Yep.
We have a couple questions.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I guess if you get any questions, just stop my blathering and let her rip.
Yeah, if anyone has other questions, feel free to ask. It looks like John is having some trouble seeing the slides. Progress. John, can you explain a little bit more about what's going on for you guys online?
Yeah, the slide panel, well, maybe now I am. I hadn't been seeing a progression of slides as Pat was progressing, but we're at multi-discharge variance right now. So thanks for whatever you did, Rachel.
All right, good to go then.
Hey, John, good to hear from you.
Good to hear you too, Pat. I'll have questions for you when you're done.
All right. I guess the next thing to talk about is our producer-led or farmer-led groups. That program has been very successful since its inception a few years ago, and it keeps growing both in the basin and statewide. So we've got a number of them that have been around for a few years now, and in the last few years, and I hope I get the titles of the names group, the new groups right, but we have Farmers of Rocha Cree, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And then the Farmers of the Lemon Weir Valley is kind of the newest one that's just formed in the last few months over in Juneau County. So again, these have been a very good, very popular program, a very I guess, more than popular, just a very good approach. And we're seeing a lot of great work done with these various groups. And so it's good to see the state is bringing more resources into that program. I think we're still trying to get even more resources in there, but it's been popular, and we're seeing a lot of really good farm leaders throughout the basin kind of take on some of these issues. So it's been a real great thing to see. Next slide. Our 9 key element plans. This is something that the department's been, I guess I'll say, focusing on, is more of these smaller watershed plans like here in 14 Mile, to really kind of target some of those efforts of the counties, NRCS, all of our local partners. And our newest one, I think just recently approved, was Lake Redstone, which is down in on the Juneau-Sauk County border. So that was a collaboration between those 2 counties, the Lake District, Lake Redstone Protection District, and then also there's a farmer-led down there, Farmers of Lake Redstone, all working together to develop a plan similar to the plan you'd have here. So that was pretty exciting. And then in another very similar example, the Guardians of Lake Decorah and City of Mauston have I guess taken some funds, and they are going to be developing some 9 key element plans for 2 watersheds within Juneau County to work on addressing some of the water quality issues in Lake Decorah. And again, as you remember from that last slide, there's an overlap with a farmer-led group group there too. So I think that's going to be a really nice project when it all comes together. Next slide. And if we go back to kind of one of our DNR programs, kind of one of our big funding sources for non-point work is our targeted runoff management grants or TRIM grants. And we've got some, good news and bad news on that front. If we look at kind of the last 2 years, so we've got our federal or state fiscal years 21 and 22. 22 is kind of this most recent cycle that was just approved, but in 21, we did get some projects funded in the basin. I don't know how familiar, I know Scott's familiar with the project on the, oh my gosh, I can't think of the name of the campground on the north end of Pete Mill, where they're doing the bank stabilization. Yeah. No, this is on the east side, up on the river in Wood County. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. I'm blanking on the name of the location. But that's actually it's going to be it's basically a bank stabilization project and also to improve some sturgeon habitat and things like that. So that's going on. Village of Rothschild received an urban construction grant, but we had a number of unfunded, unsuccessful grant applications that year, both Portage County, Marathon County, and the city of Antigo. Unfortunately, a similar story this past go around where we had again a number of unfunded grant applications that came through in the Wisconsin River Basin. So, I mean, the story is everybody's working on things, and money is tight, and so there's a lot of good things a lot of good projects just don't get funded, and that's been a bitter pill to swallow for a lot of us. Next slide. Somewhat of a similar story under our surface water grants. As you know, in 2021, we funded one here in Adams County. We also funded another, I guess we'll call it a staffing grant, some kind of similar to the one for Adams County, but very different project to work up in North Oneida and Vilas County on protection of those water bodies further up in the basin. And of course, couldn't list all the different lake planning, education grants, and healthy lakes and rivers projects we've had funded throughout the basin. If we look at 2022, we had another summer larger scale grant funded with Oneida County, and that is really targeted on doing some improvements on the Willow River Reservoir. Because they've had some actually serious shoreline erosion issues. And again, multiple grants that were funded through those other projects, as I just mentioned. And the big one in the unfunded category was Marathon County was requesting some staffing assistance, again, similar to what Adams County has. And they kind of received with the money that was left over, as they were kind of the lowest scoring grant of all the ones that were on the list. And so they only received about 10% of their requested funds to implement that project. Next slide. And that kind of leads into kind of where things are, that's kind of where we're at, and this is where things are going. And just recently, I think less than a month ago, Senate Bill 968 was introduced. And that is looking to try to direct about $600,000 of implementation funding to Marathon County to work on Fenwood Creek and a pilot project that they have there. And if you could just go on to the next slide, I want to talk a little bit more about that project. And this project started out as an idea from the county, and they as a way of utilizing their MDV, multi-discharge or variance funds. And what they are doing with that, they've developed this, what we call a pay for performance model, which is really trying to, instead of just giving you, say, $30 an acre to do a no-till or $30 an acre to do cover crops, it's based on the actual reductions that you see from the farm field. So all based on the phosphorus index. And so they have a variety of rates depending upon where, how good you, basically how much pollution you reduce by implementing practices. And so those rates are actually not that high compared to a lot of our other programs, but maybe the bigger difference is the length of the contracts, is they're really trying to get into this, looking at these whole farm conversions and having a longer contract period up to 6 years for a conversion and then maintenance to really try to get people to, adopt a new way of farming, as it were, whether that's, kind of the soil health with no-till and cover crops, or in some cases, it's more going to that rotational grazing approach. So it's kind of really up, in this case, it's really up to the farmer to choose which way they wanted to do that. And then they get paid based on, how well they do in terms of nutrient reduction. So it is a different approach than what we've done historically in the state. So they're really pushing this, and, they've been working with their local representatives at the legislature to say, we think this could be a very successful model. We want some additional funding to try to take it further. Yes.
So, it's more of a performance standard?
It's based on, they use the phosphorus index as their measuring tool, but the rates are basically how well or how low you go. So, for example, if you are kind of doing going in head first, right? Where you're going to go, say you're going to go to a rotational grazing system where you're going from typical row cropping, where your PI might be, 3 to 4, something like that. And you can say, well, we're going to switch completely. So we're going to get, and by going to this grazing approach, our phosphorus index will be 1 or less. And in that case, for the first 3 years, they would get that maximum payment. And then for $40 an acre. And then for the next 3 years, they would get a maintenance payment that's, I believe, $20 an acre. Double check my figures. So but if you say you were going to do something, maybe you weren't going to go that far, or you're going to just say, well, I'm going to get to, I think I can get to about 2 something for my phosphorus index. Then under this, you would only receive like $30 an acre for that first window of improvement, and then $15 for the, so they're really that, the more you improve, the lower or the higher pay rates you get.
So is those phosphorus index, are they already set?
Yes, under their program has their kind of their benchmarks, if you will. Yeah. And I should say, one of the things is, at least for where they run the program to date, is you already got to be meeting the statewide minimums to even talk to them to be eligible. So it's really starting with those farmers that are doing, a decent job, and then really trying to get them to that next level of activity.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
How do you determine the phosphorus index? Do you go out and test it? Do they let you know?
I mean, that is really based on, traditionally we've used that as a planning tool. And so really it's comes back to, and I guess you can do it both prospectively and retrospectively. But it really comes back to, okay, what crops did you grow? How did you till the soil? And so it's really done through, it's a modeling exercise. And SNAP Plus is our statewide nutrient management software, and that's what they use to calculate the phosphorus index. And I can't say for sure how they manage that payment. I believe that they do manage it through a kind of a retrospective, an audit, if you will, at the end of the year. Okay, did you do what you said you were going to do? And if you did what you said you were going to do, then the model should pan out.
How do you know that they said what they did what they said?
Well, some of these things are pretty easy to see, like things like no-till or cover crops. Did they plant them? Did they did they tear up the soil? Or or certainly things like rotational grazing. You can go out there and you can see, yep, it's not a silage field anymore, it's grass. So, I mean, I think a lot of these things can be, you know, certainly there are things that are a little more, I guess we'll say in the subtle aspect of, you know, how many, you know, gallons of manure did you put out? Did you put out 10,000 or 12,000? You know, things like that. To be honest with you, I'm not sure how they manage those kind of, that level of auditing, but I think when we talk about the broad things like, okay, did you till? Did you plant what you said you were gonna plant? Those are, you know, pretty easy to verify.
Because I just don't want it to be something where you start this program and then you can't keep it going because nobody's verifying what's going on.
Right, and that's, I
'Cause I
mean,
know you
that's a
have to
challenge
offer
in all, that's a
Yeah.
challenge in all our programs.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
I know you have a hard time like
Yep.
regulating things because you don't have enough staff.
right, and that's where, you know, again, where the county is, I think they're really focusing on this Fenwood piece because it is something that they can manage, you know, it's not, they're not trying to do it countywide, they're trying to do it in one, you know, small watershed where then they can actually, you know, expend that level of effort. I mean, I think that's where you start thinking about getting things to big basin scale. And that's when a lot of these difficulties really come in because we don't, you know, DNR, DADCAP counties, we really don't have that capability of doing, you know, that type of cost share everywhere. And so that's where we get into a lot of the other things that we, you know, deal with on, like with the farmer leds and really bringing in that, you know, focusing on that education and, you know, doing practices that are, you know, not doing the practice necessarily because you're getting a check from the government, but you're doing it because of all of your, you know, benefits to your own property and, you know, and all those things that, you know, we talked about. Yeah, you're doing it for, well, you're doing them not only for your community, but you're also doing it for your own set, you know,
For your bottom line.
for your bottom line, right? So it is and that's where, like I said, we really look to those farmer-led organizations to work out those details as to what does work on a working farm. You know, we can do a lot and, you know, we can do all the models and everything, but if it doesn't work for a farmer, well, then it ain't gonna stick after the check's gone. And so I think that's the, you know, the idea with these longer payments through Marathon County is, you know, the farmer has a choice of how they get to that level of phosphorus index, and they can work what works for them. And if they can, you know, do it for 6 years over a course of, you know, full rotation throughout the farm, the idea being, okay, this is now how we farm, and if ideally we'll stick with it, right?
Change the practice.
Yeah. So.
Thank you.
Do you think the exorbitant fuel prices might incentivize things like no-till, anything you can do to produce a crop with fewer passes over the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I think, but there's, you know, obviously there's conflicting, you know, because we don't know where commodity prices are, or at least I don't know where commodity prices are going to go too. I think, you know, they're probably going to go up too. So, you know, does that balance out those fuel things where people aren't as likely to change? I don't know, but yeah, I mean, certainly the things that, you know, when I've talked to farmers that have kind of made that switch, there's that fuel savings. So that's a pretty straightforward one. But I think the one thing that I've seen, you know, with the reduced tillage is talk about the time savings that they have. Because now they're just not spending as much time on the tractor, and so that they got time in their lives for other things, you know, going to the little league game or, you know, doing whatever. But really that, you know, that time element, I think has been a big, the ones that have taken this on and really said, yeah, that's a big thing. So yeah, that's where we start talking about cover crops. So it's like, well, now you're cutting into that time that they saved on the no-till. So it is you know, you got to show some benefits there to the farmer as well. Go on, next slide, I guess. And the other thing that we're working on, I say we, that's a big we, is really trying to do a better job, I guess, than we have in the past of tracking what's going on, both on the non-point side. DNR has implemented their own statewide tracking database for things that DNR is paying for in the non-point world through our trim grants, and then also through the MDV program, even though DNR actually isn't paying that. Those are, you know, local dollars or dollars from the dischargers, but we developed this system because we've got to report out to EPA to say, well, what did this program you have accomplished? So, so that's kind of one element where DNR is like, okay, when people are getting checks that flow through some DNR program, they're going to have to use this database that will and kind of tell us what you did, tell us where you did, so that we've got a better handle, on reporting back out to the public in terms of, okay, DNR, you got all these programs, what did you accomplish? Okay, well, now we can pull it out of a database and report back to people, so kind of know what your tax dollars did for you, right? DATCAP is planning on developing a similar system to track their grant programs, their soil and water resource management grants. I'm not sure if they're going to take on DNR system or if they're going to develop their own. I haven't been privy to those conversations, but I know that is something that they are very seriously looking at, and I'm actually tangentially involved in some funding from EPA that we're looking at bringing that to DATCAP to accomplish that goal. And so we want to do these, kind of get these systems up and running on a statewide basis, so we can kind of, like I said, we can report back out to folks on what happened, what was accomplished, with those taxpayer dollars. But what we're trying to do in the interim is those systems are still being developed. And this for, what we're trying to do with our, and I guess folks from Adams County will be hearing from me shortly on this in more detail. But we've developed a fairly simple tracking spreadsheet that we're gonna ask our county partners to put together for us as they go kind of moving forward this year. And really just trying to get that basic information about, the practices that went in, when did they put them in? Well, 2022, right? Why were they put in? Was it something to do with farmland preservation? Was it part of a 9-key element plan? Was it, an NR 151 compliance issue? Where did they put them in? And, kind of going into real detail on the spreadsheet. It's set up so, a county will be able to quickly get there, a HUC 12, what watershed was it in? And then, really, what did you put in? Did you put in cover crops? Did you put in a barnyard system, et cetera? How many pounds of nutrients did you reduce from that? And then, where did the funding, how was that funded? Was it a DNR grant? Was it something you worked with NRCS on? Was it SWRM dollars? So that's what we're kind of rolling out right now. We've piloted this over in the northeast part of the state with my counterpart over there, Keith Marquardt. And to date, his reaction from the counties, and he's been working with them and developing this, has been really positive. I've met with one county so far on this, and it was well received, I guess. So I think at least better than both our BIT system and DATCAP's current Survey Monkey approach. So I guess at least if people thought it was better than that, we must be somewhat on the right track. So so I guess, looking forward in future years, we can have a much better holistic picture of what's going on, from at least in terms of where we're utilizing those tax dollars. Next slide. And that brings us to kind of our other thinking, at least with the folks I'm working with. We could talk about, we talk about the things that are paid, conservation that's done with tax dollars. And if we look at 2020, probably the biggest program in the state of Wisconsin is the NRCS CREP program, where they work with their counties and get things implemented. And that that was a $31 million price tag in 2020. That covered 1.8% of the cropland acres in the state. So very small percentage of cropland is under an NRCS contract, and proportionately smaller with anything at the state level through our funds. So we feel, at least in terms of our kind of the group of us TMDL management people is we need to really get better pictures of what's going on in agriculture across the state. We have a very good picture from the USDA's National Agricultural Statistics Service on, what crops are being grown. We can look at the trends, we can look at we could look at county or watershed trends. And, one of the stories that we see is the switch from, dairy to cash grains. We see the loss of alfalfa and hay in those rotations, and more corn, more beans. So, but what we really don't have a very good picture of, at least I don't, we do in some places we do, but not on a, I guess I'll say on a statewide basis, is that, how are those crops being grown? What are our trends in, primarily in tillage and these cover crops? So we're kind of exploring some of that, and the image you see up here on the right is satellite imagery from fall of 2020 through spring of 2021. And there's a way to analyze that the different bands that those satellites capture to get an estimate of where tillage is occurring. So if you look at that image, you can kind of see the dark spots that are the center pivots, and where things are being tilled, and you can see the lighter areas, which in some cases are cranberries, other cases are grasslands. And so it kind of gives you a picture of what's going on in terms of that management. Now we need to refine that better to really say more than just, okay, we think there's a little more tillage here than that, or look at kind of some trends that way. But really, ultimately, the goal would be to really bring that back to something like, okay, a value of 0.2 on this image corresponds to 30% residue cover on a field. Something like that, where we can kind of bring it back to that, I guess I'll say, the way we think about when we look at a field, and we can go out and either take a picture of it or do a string transect and actually measure how much residue is on that cover, and then correlate that back to these type of images. So I think that's something we're exploring as to how we can do that in a cost-effective manner. And so that's kind of one of the things that we're looking at DNR, and I'm going to be pitching that tomorrow. When we talk about some funding we're potentially getting from EPA, is see if we can get that as a priority. Because I think like I said, we're on the cusp of having a good picture of where we're, and where and how we're utilizing those tax dollars on a large basis, and also on a small scale basis. But again, given how few acres are actually involved in a government program like that, we need to get a better picture of what's going on, because it really, what's going on on the private side could either be pushing, really pushing us forward, or pushing us back, or holding us steady, so really getting that picture, I think, is something we're thinking about as kind of a high priority for the next few years, in terms of stuff that DNR can do, while everybody else is doing the actual work in terms of improving practices on farmland, whether it's our counties, our farmer leds, etc. We're DNR, that's really we're not that frontline implementer, but we're trying to provide that support from the back. Sometimes on our grant program, sometimes we succeed, sometimes we fail, but so that's where, like I said, that's where we're really trying to go, at least in terms of getting that broader picture of agriculture, to see, okay, well, because we've looked at this, and I should say other folks have at least on this end of it with the satellite imagery in some watersheds, and where we've seen, at least in one case in the state, we could correlate a change in the practices on the land to the actual improvement in water quality at that large scale, at that Huckay County type scale. But here we want to try to gather a little more information locally. So for example, like when we're implementing out here, in the 14 Mile or Mill Creek that, we can kind of get a better picture of beyond what you can see, from the roadside. So, and I think with that, I am done. Oops, I forgot to put my contact information in there. Well, you probably remember who I am. Yeah, you know where I live. So I guess with that, any questions?
I have a question, Pat.
Yep.
Given that the nitrate standard was kneecapped here in recent times, I'm curious as to whether there's any possibility of establishing a nitrate-driven TMDL.
I think, well, certainly the department is in the process of, and again, I'm not in that conversation, but I know that they are trying to decide where to go with, nitrogen standards, water quality standards. That's something that EPA is, still, kind of pushing forward. It's like, okay, you got your phosphorus standard now, time to work on nitrogen, because we know that, there's various issues with nitrogen, whether it's the, from a surface water perspective, it can be the eutrophication issue, and there's also potential for aquatic toxicity associated with nitrates, plus, obviously all the issues with groundwater. And, I think that's something that's gonna move forward, but I don't know in what form it's gonna take. I'm not, when if you get Scott Provost in and, have a few drinks with him, he might have probably has a better handle on that than I do. But I know it's something that, we've kind of reported back to at least to management to say, okay, here's what we know and here's what we don't know from a kind of a science perspective in terms of at least surface water quality standards. So it's kind of up to those folks that pay grades above me to decide how they're going to run with that. But I think, I think it's something that's not going to be forgotten. We certainly know that when we look at things like nitrogen use efficiency and, how to work, the ag community working on using less nitrogen. I think, we know it's a big issue. They know it's a big issue. And I think we're going to see a lot more focus on it than we have in the past. So I think, yeah, even though it's not going to be a performance standard anytime soon, I think there's a lot of people that are going to keep working on that subject.
So you mentioned the EPA in your initial statements here.
Mhm.
Is it proper to believe then that, or at least that you take it that, and I'm not trying to corner you, so don't take me the wrong way, but that the EPA itself would be the major driver of a change in attitude on the state level toward nitrogen?
I don't, to be honest with you, I'm not sure how hard they're pushing. Certainly if they pushed hard, they could be. We saw that, quite frankly, we saw that with phosphorus and some pressure that was exerted there from both outside lawsuits and, at EPA. So I don't know how hard they're going to push, but if the mood takes them, they could. And if they do, that certainly would make things happen faster. I guess is what I can say, just based on history. But that's, I guess I'll say pure speculation on my part.
Well, I certainly didn't mean to put you in a corner on that, but
No.
Well, thank you for your presentation, Pat. It was great to hear you again.
Oh, it was good to hear you too. Maybe I'll be able to see you sometime in person.
Indeed.
Excuse me. I have a
Yes.
question. So, isn't there a standard for nitrates in wells?
Yes, there's NR 140 as our groundwater standards, and there is a 10 milligram per liter
Okay.
nitrate standard.
So who then would, and I know enforcement isn't a big priority a lot for DNR, you have other things you're working on, but who would then enforce that?
Well, usually that issue comes up in terms of once there's a well associated with it, or if there's a WPDS permit associated with it. So if you have we have a number communities across the state that have do groundwater disposal. They have seepage cells, and they have a monitoring well system around their wells. And yeah, when that water, combination of wastewater, groundwater gets to the edge of their property, they are, supposed to meet that 10 milligram per liter nitrate standard, in kind of a general term. So, when we go through like we have our safe drinking water folks, and, if you're out at, have the rural bar, and they have to, they're serving the public, they have to get their water tested, and they're supposed to be delivering that at 10 milligrams per liter nitrate also. If they don't, then they get, notice, and they should be using bottled water. But from a kind of a general non-point perspective, there's not a permit associated with it, as it were, that, then that's, the enforcement becomes much, I guess, I don't know if it's fair to say it's no man's land, but it's not really, we don't typically deal with that in that sense.
Well, I get the impression from Scott that this is becoming something that the DNR wants to start testing and start figuring out what's going on with nitrates. Am I
Yeah.
right with that?
Yeah, I think we need to get a better picture of what's going on. I mean, I think, one of the things that was rolling through my mind, especially, we look at our surface water data, we can see this upward trend in nitrates. And, one of the questions that comes to first to my mind is, well, how long is that new nitrates, or is this nitrates that we were doing in the 70s, applying in the 70s, what's the age of that water that's bringing in those nitrates, and is it going to get, how long till it gets better, right? Is it going to get a lot worse before it gets better, or is it going to kind of stay where it's at before it gets better, or is it going to get better because we've maybe done some stuff with nutrient management? We've done a lot of stuff, I should say, with nutrient management over the last 20, 30 years. I don't have a sense for that, but I'm not sure how well we have a good handle on that statewide. But I think, yeah, Scott says, I think that's something we're going to pay a lot more attention to. We're starting to pay a lot more attention to nitrogen in terms of lake eutrophication, and really starting to get a better feel for that. There's one of the more kind of recent things where EPA has been working on nutrient criteria is they've brought nitrogen data into their lake modeling. And so there's like a little app that you can look at or use on the EPA's website. And so if you know how deep your lake is, and a few other things in terms of big one is dissolved organic carbon, which we don't have a lot of data for, but we're trying to get more data. But you can have a few parameters, and then you can kind of see how your lake reacts to both phosphorus and nitrogen. So that's something a tool we haven't had before. So it's
And I
starting.
think Adams County, and maybe Kyle could speak to this. Aren't you going to start doing a water testing thing around the lakes?
That's a question for Anna.
Yeah. She's not here.
I'm on.
Oh, she's not. I thought your name. So,
That-
so is that what you're starting to do now? Is start to find out what if that's affecting things, start a database, get a control?
Are you talking about on the lake or on wells?
Well, don't lakes affect the wells?
Well, right. So the program we're creating though is more to focus on the wells, so private wells within the county. And that'll be rolling out this spring, and I can talk a little bit more after the county board meeting this week about it. But yeah, we are starting the private well testing program specifically to understand watersheds and the county as a whole more when it relating to groundwater quality. But I mean, we do have citizen science like Phil going out collecting the citizens lake monitoring data, and I know we've talked about adding more samples to that to get a more in-depth view of what the lakes look like for nitrates specifically.
Because my thought process is that if water's in a lake and we're all sand around the lake, that eventually if there's a lot of nitrates in the water, it's going to affect the wells. I'm not sure if that's scientific at all, but it just seems to me like water moves. It doesn't just move straight down, it moves all directions.
Yeah, I'll say it can. or it could be, obviously vice versa, where, depends on the water going into the lake or is it coming out of the lake? It gets, and nitrogen is a little, I shouldn't say a lot harder to track because, you can, there's a lot more processes that can happen, particularly like denitrification. So say if you had high nitrates in the lake, if they have to go through the lake sediments, which can be anaerobic, they'll actually get some denitrification in those sediments. And so the nitrate may be going in, but it might be getting used up by the bacteria and not making it out. So it is kind of complex in that sense. So I think and again, like I say, where's the water going in these lakes? It may be that it's more water's going in than to the can't say necessarily, that'd be the big question is, are the wells drawing from the lake or are they not drawing from the lake? That's probably
I think in
the
our
big
area,
question.
most of the lakes are being fed by some groundwater.
Mhm.
not
So you-
just surface
so you
water.
think
The
that
groundwater
it's coming
out of the
in,
terrain
Yeah,
around the lake.
but I think, again, that's, if we get the monitoring data, we'll see what patterns show up. Maybe you'll see that there are, that corner of the lake is higher and, kind of then you get out to that next ring of, is that, okay, is it higher in this corner because it's coming from the lake or is it coming from somebody over here? No, that's where you start pulling on those threads and see, so you try to get that real picture of what's going on.
Question. And everyone's probably tired of hearing me ask this question, but do you expect that at some point in the future, we'll have a trophic state index for nitrogen so we can use it in classifying our lakes?
I'd say whether it'll actually be on the same scale like the TSI, I don't know. I think, like I said, with this new EPA app, and if somebody sends me an email and reminds me, I'll send you the link. That kind of at least puts it all in context. Really what it does is it's, I guess I'll just step back on that, is it can basically, you can put in some of your lake characteristics and say, okay, what is my algae level that's acceptable? And it will then return back based on what ecoregion you're in and things like that, your lake characteristics. Okay, here's your target phosphorus and a target nitrogen that should allow you to meet those chlorophyll algae pools. And so it's similar to a TSI, but not exactly the same.
Be interested in getting a link to that if you can provide.
Yeah, like I said, if somebody can just shoot me an email and then I'll be sure to send it out then.
Great, thank you.
All right, then we did have a comment in the chat I wanted to address here from Sally. So Sally, thank you for joining us today. She was just wondering if folks could introduce themselves. I'm wondering, Sally, if this is your first time joining a 14 Mile Watershed Alliance meeting. And feel free to unmute. I know how that goes.
Yeah, I get a couple of those too.
Oh, funny. Well, maybe it would be helpful if we could just go down the board and everyone just introduce themselves once.
Yeah,
Is that all right?
Okay. I'm Barb here, right?
Jim Coiler. Phil Rockenbach.
Dave Trudeau, I'm the vice president of the Alliance and the chairman of the board.
Yes, he's a big wig.
Yeah.
I'm Karen Kanotak.
Jerry Wiesner. Dave Moyer, all together.
It's not quite wide enough. We could
That's
hold
what
her
they're
own.
doing.
All right. Glad to have you with us, Sally. Thanks. All right.
All right, anyone else? All right, well, thank you for having me. It's good to see you again. Oh, no problem.
I'll get a good presentation, another meeting.
Okay, let's bring Kyle up near the mic and have an update on what's going on.
Where's our mic living today? We don't have the podium for standing?
It can pick you up anywhere.
Oh, boy, let me get down
So if you
near
wanna
it.
be on camera, you can, but you don't have
Oh, the camera's so spooky.
to.
Oh, I don't know, I'd have to justify it, but my knees are old and they want me to sit down. Oh, that's not what my knees say.
Just wait.
Yeah, it's the mileage. Yeah, it's the donuts. All right, so we've got for the 14 Mile Watershed, we've got two big things coming up the next 2 weeks here. We've got those presentations, so not presentations, but town hall style informational meetings. I just out of frame, you just get my knee. So this camera just hates me. I'm too big for it. Yeah. So anyway, there's going to be two meetings at 5:30 on this Wednesday and then next Tuesday at 5:30. This week's meeting on Wednesday is in the village of Plainfield at the community center. It's the fire station there next to Starks and Luke and across from the municipal office for the village of Plainfield. And then on Tuesday of next week at 5:30, it's here in Rome at the community center, just across the hall here in the big gymnasium style room. So those are two big events. Those are the same event. It's just a repeat of the same brief presentation, and then we'll be taking questions, although we will have like a frequently asked questions updated from Plainfield to update, on Rome. So that way we'll have recordings from both and we'll take questions from both events. And it will be available via Zoom. And we sent out those emails. We put out a big email list that we could from everybody that we have to share those emails. So, 14 Mile Watershed Alliance and others can push, promote that link. I'm gonna allow folks to watch it remotely. So.
Kyle, can people submit questions to you ahead of these meetings?
Yeah. So you could call or email me any of your questions. I'll compile them and try to address them as we go, especially and we'll have a form during the meeting that you can fill out and turn back with questions, and we'll try to address those at the Rome meeting follow up, and then get those answers and those questions recorded at Rome. So let's kind of try to do a two-step here to capture as many questions and answer as many as we can.
And also, will you then have a YouTube thing or someplace where we could see it?
Yeah, it'll
afterwards?
be, so
Okay.
after it's recorded, then we'll edit it for brevity to get those questions together and the basic material. And then, I don't know, maybe lighten up my hair or something. And then that'll go on YouTube. So so we'll put that up on YouTube or a shareable image host, video host that's released to get to. It'll be embedded on our website and then also available for email and linking and everything else. So,
Right.
Very good.
Yeah.
And then Anna, I'm assuming you just put the form up for people to submit
Yep.
questions.
That's a registration form for anybody who's interested.
and just email me with questions. It's easier for me to do individual emails that way with any kinds of questions that I can address them versus like one large thread or a Google form where it's some of that information is harder to follow up on. I can't really. So yeah, so just email, or you can call me on my cell phone, leave a voicemail, text me on it, and I can get to those, especially beforehand. I can try to address those. So aside from that, after these two big events, I've been hitting the ground really hard to get those going. Then we'll be getting towards planting season already. The snow yesterday doesn't sound like it, but in late April and early May, I've really got to get moving there to get the survey set up. We're going to be doing a survey of farmland and cropping systems in the watershed, sort of what Pat's alluding to there. Hopefully we can use some of that data to inform some of that remote sensing stuff like what Pat's doing, but we'll see what we can do this year as the first year running things up, just to get a better understanding. The 14 Mile 9 element plan has two main provisions early on here to begin with in its implementation plan, and that is to include better understanding our watershed with surveys to understand what kind of cropping systems a little bit better, the timing, conditions of use and practices. But then also the second part of that is for outreach and education. And so we're really hitting both at the same time, already starting with the educational events and outreach events, and then, moving into surveying and collecting what we can for remote sensing. So I'll be kind of doing that, pivoting April and May into more field work, surveys, boots on the ground sort of things. I would also like to set up later this summer, be on watch for just like breakfast events where we pick a local breakfast place or maybe lunch-ons
luncheons where, you know, I'll be present to answer questions and we'll have like a specific topic, or we'll bring in guest speakers or something. You can just come and, you know, kind of, you know, grab a meal or grab some donuts or something, and then we'll have, you know, kind of a discussion to dive deeper into topics. So I'm really looking forward to that. Not sure how it's going to shake out, but for instance, maybe have a specific small group discussion on the hydrology for the Tri-Lakes, really unpack and let people ask those kinds of questions in casual environment. So with ideally somebody pretty knowledgeable on the topic to do things like that. So those are kind of the plans where we're looking for. The survey is set in stone for sure happening in these two events coming up, and then just see where that puts us by summertime. Any other?
Producer-led group going for.
That's something that's just got to be built over time. It's going to depend on what kind of, you know, engagement we have from specific producers, and just over time building trust and building networks. And I mean, so far I've been able to interact with you folks a lot here on the lakes and the Watershed Alliance, but it's just going to take time for me to find and meet enough people to form a group and to really get that moving. So.
And to remember with that, it's called producer-led for a reason. I mean, it's really got to have buy-in from the producers. There's only so much we, as the county, can do to promote it until we have producers buy into it or producers interested in it.
And that's part of these informational meetings, right? I've called a lot of the producers in the area and just introducing myself, because I haven't really gotten to meet most of them. So, I mean, you know, they're not really gonna to sign on and you know, join up in a small group, a producer-led watershed group until, I mean, you know, it's even pitched to them. So that's something that in this plan for implementation, we're looking at laying the groundwork this year, and then seeing what, you know, what producers want to do into 2023 to really start seeing that develop. That's when we'd anticipate seeing something like that develop.
Are there a lot of large producers in these producer-led groups?
In like the existing groups,
Bigger farms, like.
Anna would know for existing groups, but I don't know.
Yeah, Karen, there's not a ton of large farms within the groups. I know there's in our area specifically quite a few large farms, just because vegetable production in our areas tends to be larger farms. But Stock County, Redstone, a lot of these other producers are smaller generational farmers that, you know, it's a lot of maybe grains or corn and bean rotations, rotationally grazing, beef cattle, or small dairy operations. So we're really unique when it comes to the producer-led group with the area that we're in.
Is Heartland Farms participating in the Bush Creek?
Yep, Jeremy is one of my lead producers.
So
He's a big guy.
Yes. There's a few large producers in the 14 Mile Watershed, and I know of, and then also, but just crunching the numbers too. I mean, there's one large corporate interest, but otherwise everything else is family farms and multi-generational. I mean, even like Heartland's Farms is a family-run business. It's not publicly traded. It is a private LLC run by, you know, the family. So that's good to keep in mind.
So the other producer that we have that's big is a publicly traded.
Well, there's some like Bill Gates owns a lot of farmland, right? So there's a lot of land that's held in trust,
Okay.
and then local producers rent that off, right? And so then there's some larger organizations like John Hancock owns a lot of land in the area. A lot of different investment firms own land, but it's still producers, it's still local producers actually farming on the land.
And not only that, it's canneries as well,
Mhm.
that those are large corporations.
Right, so those are also, that's an example. So some of the landowners are corporations for investment firms, and then there's, yeah, the canneries and the production. Yep, and those are part of our watershed, right? Those are part of the stakeholders, the canneries, and the folks who actually buy the produce from the central sands. So they're part of the conversation too. And that's something actually pretty unique because you can't, you don't quite sell these products the same as you would with commodities like grain or silage or hay bales or corn grain. It's not quite sold the same way as you would. It's more value added products. So it's a very unique agricultural ecosystem that we have in the 14 miles. So another great topic for a small group. Anything else? All right, excellent. Thank you.
We'll see you Wednesday.
Yep, absolutely.
Oh, it's Thursday?
No, no, it's this Wednesday.
Oh, you're right.
It's in
Okay.
2 days. Yeah.
Right,
It's
right,
Tuesday,
okay,
the
sorry.
week after.
Yep.
Okay, next item is a little bit of a follow-up on our planning meeting that we had last month. I have worked on pulling all the information together. Did you have detailed notes?
Well, Rachel did this really neat spreadsheet for us and really, I think she got it organized really well in terms
For some
of
reason I
what
haven't-
we've
I haven't
accomplished,
seen it.
where we're going. You didn't get it in the email? She
I-
emailed it to us all. I here, take this one. And you can have that one.
Further along than I thought.
So the pages are gonna go left. There's gonna be 3 across by 2 down. It's a big
Very good. So
spreadsheet.
we got priorities set and kind of each of the items, responsible parties so that have our accountability. and everything. Anyone have any other input then regarding our February annual planning? We'll start with our committee reports and we'll open her up first with you, Karen. This week.
Okay, well, I have quite a bit, so I'm gonna try to be brief, because I know everybody's getting tired, but basically, the YouTube channel I'm catching up on, I'm really happy to say. I have a problem downloading some of the big files like this meeting that we put on YouTube. So it becomes a real issue because it takes me literally a half hour to put in one. So it can be really time consuming. But I am working on it. I think I've got all of them except for last month, which I'm working on. And then as far as the other thing I want to mention on this is also that we're starting to plan our June event, which is our event, the State of Our Lakes. So I really want everybody to, especially in the next meeting, if we can make that an agenda item where we really start working on it. It's now March. That doesn't give us a lot of time. That's coming right after Memorial Day, so we really have to hit the ground running.
Isn't that something that would be better handled in
Yes.
a group outside of
We can do that.
the regular meetings? I mean, I would be starting this week or next week to get together and
can do that.
do some planning.
I'm all for that.
All right.
The sooner the better. So that's something that we could try to work on.
Yeah, well, let's send an email around and
Okay.
see when people are available.
Okay, that sounds good.
Get started.
That sounds really good.
All right.
So I myself finally attended the winter farmer's market food. It's amazing how many people go to the winter's farmer's market. I was really impressed with that. It's a little harder to capture people at that particular environment for whatever reason. People tend to just walk right by. So I tried to capture them with cookies. It worked on some people, but it's a tough one. That's a tough one. So, but we're still getting our name out there. That is the most important thing. It is a good place because a lot of people are there. We will be again getting ready for the summer farmers market, which starts in May. So we have to start figuring out who's going to be able to do that. The other thing that we've been doing is Rachel Whitehair, Gus Mancuso, and I have gotten together. We got together in February to work on starting to do some outreach into the high schools in the area. So Rachel has been wonderful with with this. She's kind of taken the lead because she knows way more than Gus and I. So her suggestion was that we go to a few classes at the high school, meet with them, give them a survey, which she's already come up with, which is outstanding as usual. And then to get them to get involved, you know, kind of an interactive thing. Ask them questions in a few classes and then take that survey and give it to the rest of the whole high school. We are currently working on that. We are having some obstacles. And the obstacle is trying to get our foot in the door with the high school. They're just really busy. Just getting our contact with them has been really difficult. If anybody has any suggestions on how to get our foot in the door, I would love that. We're really having some problems with that. Other than that, we're going forward. I mean, Rachel has gone forward with this. We're going to go out to the schools as soon as they allow us to come in and start, you know, administering the surveys and getting some input from the kids. We really feel like the youth are the way to go, to get them to know what's going on in the watershed and to then become members of groups like ours. So that's really our goal in this. Rachel, if you want to add.
I think you got it pretty well covered. Yeah, it's just gonna be a real brief, quick survey. You know, initially the thought behind doing that was that, you know, why create youth programs if you don't even know if that youth want to show up to those events and programs. So instead of putting all that work without any guaranteed benefit, we thought this might be a little bit more strategic approach and actually build something that that the kiddos at the high school really care about and would match, you know, for those kids who are looking for work study programs or internships or things like that. They want to go into natural resources. Well, maybe we can help build something that could address their needs as well and also spread the good word.
So like everything that we do, thank you very much. Like everything we do, we're trying to tailor it to the people within our communities. Because that's the only way we're gonna get people to even think about us as, you know, a worthwhile mission for them to be part of. So that's one of the things we're doing. 2022 Surface Water Education Grant, I'm not sure why that's, but
I was gonna report on that.
okay. So basically, I think really what we're trying to do now is still get our name out there, still make sure that people know that we're here. So that's really our focus, and that's what I've been trying to do. It would be wonderful if anybody knows of any possibilities of getting into the papers. I don't know how to do any of that. So if anybody has ideas, I think we should do that. We should start getting to that level where we start going, if we can, on a radio show or whatever, and talk to people about what we're doing here. Because I think it really is important. And I think once we get in front of people, I think we make a good case. People have seen what's been going on in the watershed. So I think people are getting to the point where they want to hopefully take action to resolve some of these issues.
Who's been your contact with Rachel?
It's been Keith Johnson. He's been really difficult. I'm sure he's very busy. I'm guaranteeing he is, but
Have you talked to Mike Schoenfeld?
you know,
Science?
I tend to work with Keith. I have.
Oh,
I've met with Mike. I've met with I don't remember all the names. Yeah. But there was several. We went with the civics. We went with the environmental teacher. And we went with Keith because he was the principal. We all got together, we talked about all of this stuff. But then, you know, as the summer went through, we really didn't touch base and now we've completely lost contact. So, and I get it, they're busy. But again, I'm asking for help. I really think that we need to have some better ways of getting into the school. I mean, I would be up for going to the school and knocking at the door. I mean, I'm up for that. I mean, whatever it takes, but I don't want to be imposing. So I don't want to do that either. I want to, you know, keep it on a good level. So that's what we're trying to do. So that's about it. I think, you know, I think we need to start with the planning that state of our lakes, because that's really our big event. Yes, yes.
I'm sorry, what was the date on that?
June 4th. So it's the weekend after Memorial Day, which could be a problem because people tend not to come up the week after a big weekend. But, you know, we'll take what we can get. You know, if we get a lot of people, it'd be great. Also, Pritzels is no longer around, so we're gonna have to look at different sources of
I do just want to add a quick comment. You mentioned radio, and if you do want to get on like WFHR out of Rapids,
Okay,
they're wonderful. I can shoot contact information to you, and they can do a quick recording where they can like shoot out a commercial throughout the days.
okay.
Or they have the morning magazine on Thursdays, and they can get you on there as well. They're always looking for people to bring in for speakers.
That would be great. So,
Thursday morning. We'll be through several times. For different things.
Oh, yeah.
and the only other thing I wanted to mention is one thing that I kind of is my pet thing here. I'm not a big fan of formal anything, like this being on a dais in front of the people in the audience is a problem for me. Maybe it's just me, but I think it separates us from the people we want to work with. So I'm still hoping at some level and at some point, we'll start doing our meetings at a time where other people can attend. You know, people that aren't us, meaning the retired folks, can attend and then become part of our group. So I'm still hoping we as a group will consider doing a Saturday morning. You know, some, especially, pardon?
Evenings or Saturdays when other people are working.
Exactly. The only reason I mentioned Saturday is I'd love to get the seasonal. Yeah, that's my goal. So I'm still hoping we're still open to that as a group. And I still hope that we can start doing something like that. And then have it more of a roundtable. Let's all sit together and make it a, you know, everybody gets to talk and we get some ideas from the people. That's how people, I think, buy into it, is if they feel like they're part of it. So that's my 2
Yeah,
cents.
you're not the only one thinking about that. Phil and I had some discussion about like, when I come here and we have our fire meeting, we set up tables down there. with
That's how it should be.
tables. You know, even though it's still here,
Yeah,
so that
We
it's
can
being
do that.
recorded and stuff, you know,
we can do
maybe
that.
instead of having the judges up here on the bench with my
Yeah.
gavel.
I mean, this is to me, just
Interact.
so you know, this to me is a threatening situation. If I was sitting down there, I'd be threatened by this. So, and I'm not a threatening person. So I really would like everything to be a big group. We all get to talk. We all get to be part of it. I think people feel better about that.
Is that just something we arranged with Jamie and?
We
set
used
up
to
the
do it.
tables?
We
I
used to
know.
do
Yeah,
that.
for a while.
Yeah, we
Or
used to
COVID.
do it.
Work over.
Yeah, we could put that, isn't that a speaker over that you can hear?
Oh, yeah, I can make this work any which way.
Okay.
That's no issue.
All right, as
How
long
about
as
next
Rachel
time?
says it's okay, it's okay.
Next time we get here a little early and move some.
Let's
tables
do it.
around.
Oh, we gotta bring
Let's
in
do it.
tables. in the other room.
Right.
Well,
That's no
I
issue.
will get her.
We got
early.
people that can do that.
I will get her early.
All right.
I really think that would be a good idea. That's my opinion. I don't want to push it on anybody, but that's.
No,
that's
I
how
think
No,
feel.
that's why I
I'll
said
agree.
you're not the only person
Okay.
thinking about that.
We did it that way before COVID. And then
Yeah.
COVID, things changed.
All right, thanks. I'm done. Sorry. So,
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Karen? If not, we'll go on. to Phil, can you give us an update on what's going on with the winter water testing?
Sure.
Or maybe we should start having Dave chime in with part of the.
We'll get there. Just real briefly, we completed the February upstream testing on the 27th. We were able to take samples and get full measurements at 8 of the 9 patients. The location in Portage County, we drove down at least 2 feet with an auger and never hit water.
Oh, my gosh.
So it must be pretty low flow there. Anyway, and with respect to the lake testing, I'll be working in April, I guess, with Anna to put our equipment together and get all the forms ready and get our teams on board for lake testing, which will begin in May.
Have you got Sherwood covered?
Yes, yeah. Thanks. So that's it on testing, intern status, no change in status. That program is running well and we can probably scratch it from the agenda. Unless there's some change.
Unless we need to recruit additional.
No, we've got over the point things.
Okay, Let me start with the surface water education grant a little over a week ago. We finally got the paperwork from DNR, the agreement we need to sign for that. That came in. I had thought because Don's name was on the application that he needed to sign it. We're running into some logistics with him printing and signing and having internet connection where he is out west. But then I happened to be talking to Gina Keenan about some other issues and found out that even though Don was on the application, my name was on the
Some other form.
on the resolution. My name was on the resolution so that I could sign it. So I got that in on last Friday electronically, and I had a return receipt, so I know it got there and got read. So so that begins tomorrow on the 15th of March, so we can start spending money. And Bill put together a good form that I think most, if not all of us saw, so that we can track hours related to each of the projects. That's how we'll maximize our 25% match. And, so that's all ready to go forward. So we'll kind of start going back to our annual plan here, and in our subsequent meetings, just about all of the grant has to do with various forms of outreach, but it doesn't mean it all needs to fall on Karen. So
Quick question, so can we start tracking hours starting tomorrow, or when does it start?
tomorrow,
Tomorrow, so that's when we can first start.
Yep.
tracking. Okay,
And we'll do those monthly and I'll collect them and
okay,
put them into the DNR form.
got it.
The PDF that you can sell them over.
I know.
okay, Healthy Lakes, a couple things I put in. Finally finished up this last week with closing out my Healthy Lake grants from 2019. So that was a $4,000 reimbursement to Lake Sherwood property owners through Tri-Lakes for the fish sticks that we finished up in 2021. So now I'm working on closing out the 2020 grant, and that includes 4 projects on private land, one that was a rock infiltration, 3 that were native plantings, and then $3,000 toward another Lake Sherwood fish sticks year, and that's the project that we just finished up in February of this year. So working on that. Then after that, I'll get on to some of the people that have completed their 2021 projects. Of course, we've got 12 projects also that are beginning for the 2022 grant that was just announced. So I'll be sending out something in the next couple of days, let people know they can begin spending and tracking the hours for the 2022 project. So signs is written on here. I have heard that the Healthy Lake signs have gotten from gotten as far as Scott Provost. So I said, when can we meet you? I said, is somebody going to the Lakes and Rivers Convention? Anything we can do to get, and he said he'll deliver them. So hopefully we'll get together soon. Of course, then developing some other larger, more prominent signs as part of the education grant too. So that's kind of a 2-pronged approach to signage. Fertilizer, clean operator, as far as I know, we still have a good supply of signs if we're going continuous recognition for that program. Do you have any?
Well, we should probably consider getting new signs. Because we're gonna go through we tend to give them out during the farmer's market in the
Right,
summer.
right.
So I would hate to like run out in, summer. That would be a great scenario if we ran out, but, yeah, I would definitely like to get more signs.
I believe there's more over at the Tri-Lakes garage.
There's not that many though, because I was pulling them out. So I'll do an inventory. I have to go there. So I'm gonna do an inventory of everything. I'm gonna tell
Kind of
everybody
good,
what we
yeah.
have. But the thing I'm having a problem with, so again, I asked for help on this. We do not have a printer now because we lost ours. They went down with the COVID, with the pandemic. So there is Quality Plus Printing, which I'm gonna go with them. That'll be my first place that I go. But if anybody knows of any other printers in the area,
Well, it plus seems the best. I think.
yeah,
Research a couple of small jobs.
Okay.
That part of the best.
yeah. And they actually helped with our development of our logo, so I know they're good. But they've lost a few people. I didn't know, yeah. So I'll check with them.
The one on 8th Street.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we're about to use them. They've helped us redo our brochure.
Oh, good.
We're just about to get them to print our brochure.
Are they fairly reasonable?
Sure. They're the only ones that were responsive,
Okay.
but
Good.
yeah, they're very responsive. I met
We
Phil.
know it.
Phil's the owner and Tracy is the one that makes it happen up there. And
All right, so Phil's owner, because it's different from when I was there. There was a different person I worked with. And then Tracy is the person?
that's
Okay,
a female. Yeah,
Okay.
she redesigned our brochure,
okay.
or updated it. It's a
Okay.
refresh. So
I'll definitely.
so
go.
far so good.
Good. Good to know.
That's
Thank you.
what's available right now.
Yeah.
I work Tracy on the fishery for Lake Sherwood, so
Oh, really?
so I can
Oh,
forward her
Okay.
email.
That'd be perfect. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is there's a good place that I've been using for signs for the state of our lakes. And by the way, we may have to get, I don't know how this is gonna work. We have 2 sets of signs, one for June and one for September. What was it? September? August.
August, yeah.
So, and for 2 different locations, but we're back to the town hall. I might be able to use the sign from 2019. I don't know if I can, but I know I can use the same sign guy. But that's a big, we're gonna have to talk about that all. But that's another thing we have to talk
That's
about.
something, yeah. Let us know whether we can use those signs or not,
Right.
whether it needs a date overlay or something on it.
It might, yeah. Sometimes that costs more than remaking the signs. That's the problem with that. Yeah. So I might be able to do some of them. So I might be able to get some, paper, and I've got a good printer. I don't know if it will last in the rain. That's the only thing.
Almost as good, man.
It does. Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
But you want it weather.
Definitely, because they're gonna be out in the weather for at least a week. And they take.
So real quick, just wanted to raise a question that was asked in the
Okay,
chat.
go ahead.
Wondering what is going on with printing. So if you could, with that education grant, just a quick summary of, some of the products that we're planning on developing and printing.
Well, go through that, but I know we were gonna do the Healthy Lakes signs. That was part of the printing. We wanted to do a brochure for the 9 key element plan. A bit of a problem there. I talked to Kyle Kettner, who's the watershed coordinator, and he encouraged me not to do it and that they would do it. Megan Steckelberg and the people at Adams County Land and Water would be better at creating that brochure. Which I don't know if we still want to come up with our own, layman's brochure. I don't know what we're gonna do there, but I was gonna talk.
We should have further discussion about
We
whether,
should.
or whether we should, through our grant, somehow sponsor some of the printing costs or something like
Right,
that.
right,
In exchange for getting our logo on the brochure.
exactly, exactly.
And then, of course, we're looking at coaster.
Right, that was the other thing. We're considering getting coasters for the local establishments. We're gonna have to get another small group on these things because these are pretty intense.
Yep.
So
Along with some of the highway signage and
Yeah.
there are quite
for the 14 mile watershed.
a couple of the things off the top of my head on the list for
didn't bring my copy of it.
There was a brochure to identify properties out,
Oh, yes,
lake properties, and
Right.
kind of have like a informal brochures, so you
right.
can
So people knew
tour the lakes and
Right.
see what properties.
our Healthy Lakes program,
Yeah,
properties, or people who just have native plantings on their shoreline. They don't have to do it through Healthy Lakes. Certainly they can do it on their own. So, yeah, we're gonna try to identify those people and then have a map, and so people can look at them. Of course, signage is the best thing. If you see a sign that this is a native planting or a Healthy Lakes project, that is the best thing. So, yeah. So there's a whole bunch of different, I don't have a word, right?
That's okay.
That somebody asked that question.
Yeah, Sally was just wondering for a little more
We
detail.
could always use help from anybody out there who has any expertise in any of these things. We welcome you to join our group,
even
And
if you
part of
don't,
us.
even if you don't have expertise.
even if you don't.
You'll gain it.
If
You'll
you're,
gain it.
if you're just if you just want to be involved, we would love to have you. We're a great group of people.
Okay, Legacy Foundation, I don't think we have any update on that. Finance, we'll go to Barb first and then to Phil.
Okay, I applied for a raffle license for us, and there's two different types of licenses. And an A1 where you have to get the raffle tickets all signed or, printed out and sell them, 6 for $5, that type of thing. Or the ones where you use them for a one-day event. And Phil and I discussed it and decided that the ones for the one-day events would be more applicable and less costly for us to do. So that's the type of license that I got, was a Class B license. And we, unlike last year, they didn't reject it. We did get it. We do have the license. So we're able to do something like that. So that would mean we could do something at the farmer's market possibly, or at the State of the Lakes, any of those types of things. But, we can use those type of tickets that you can tier and card, that type of a thing. So we're set for that. One other thing that I just wanted to mention that really isn't finance related, but the voters forum is next Monday evening for all of the candidates for the town, the school board, and the county board seats. There's a question box in the lobby here, and so far nobody's submitted a question in that box. And at the library, there's only been one question submitted. So please submit some questions for it related to the watershed, so that we can get candidates to address that. The deadline for submitting questions is noon this Friday.
Want to have any update on tree sale?
The tree sale, well, I'm just waiting to hear from Megan as to when it will be distributed out. And we're all set to do that at Tri Lakes there. So it's probably going to be the end of April if this early spring type of weather continues.
Have anything, Phil?
Just mention that we have roughly $6,100 in the treasury, and I'm waiting for a check from the DNR for an advance on our education grant of $3,750, which certainly will find good ways to spend. So
I'm sure it'll be gone before it gets here.
One thing I want to mention to everybody out there in the online group and all, everybody can go on Amazon Smile and choose the 14 Mile Watershed Alliance as their charity. So I encourage everybody to do that. And then we get donations through the Amazon Smile. I think Phil has mentioned how much we got.
we've got 2 checks or 2 deposits directly. The checking account
So-
for Amazon for $5 and $12. So
Every little bit counts. So if anybody,
buy lots on Amazon.
right. So, and it doesn't impact you as a purchaser. You're not paying more. This is all done through Amazon. They're the ones who are giving out the money. And if if you care about the watershed, this is a really easy way to participate. That's all.
Is the 14 miles considered contributing to the refreshments for Kyle's two meetings?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought we have.
We've done $200 for desserts.
You have 14 mile days.
We
Yep.
did, yeah.
Yep.
Hopefully the town will fill in 100 and trailers. 100.
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be great.
Yeah, that sounds like that would just about cover
I think all of
the
this
budget he had for
expenses, right,
sandwiches.
right.
So you can get 14 miles recognition on.
Correct.
And a lot of us are gonna show up, you know, to show that we're part of it.
Because we like free meals.
Right. So wear your badges if you do go from the 14 mile watershed.
Good.
And
Good
David,
point.
I'm putting in one for you, so it'll be- not before the event.
We have just a couple comments from Sally. One regarding radio and newspaper, she said, "Well, retired people, if that's your target market, great. If you want to reach younger folks, Facebook and other social media." Yeah, Sally, that is one thing that the group has been talking a lot about and is on our kind of strategic plan. Karen does a great job with the Facebook and YouTube, and we're also starting to talk a little bit about social media, maybe doing an Instagram. Hopefully, as we get more youth involved, we can appoint someone to kind of handle that stuff for the group.
And
And, oh, go
I
ahead.
was gonna say, Sally, if you have any more knowledge about these things, about any of the social media, I encourage you to contact me. You can go right through the 14mile.org website. My email is really easy. It's karen.14milewatershed@gmail.com, but I'd love to get your ideas or to have help.
Got it.
All right. Okay, next item, our partnership development. Don wasn't able to tune in today, said he had spotty internet connection again. Speakers, we don't have any speakers lined up beyond this month. Let me just tell you, my take on it is that between now and the state of our lakes, I'm not too interested in spending a lot of time gathering information through speakers. I'd rather have us go through our agenda and then maybe have a subgroup where we dive in and kind of have everything broken up and that we were responsible for different items. Make sure we're going to organize.
The springtime, there's a lot of activities going on. We need to have after meeting.
Yeah, and it's tough around other people's schedules to free up to get here. And I think Kyle's presentations that he's sharing with us are going to get longer and longer as he gets more involved in. It gives us feedback, especially next month after the two forums he's organizing. So if nobody disagrees, I'm not going to try to line up anybody for speakers for the next 2 months. Until
Yay. Any disagreement?
Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Conference. Karen, I know you said
I'm
you were
going
planning on attending.
all 3 days.
I don't know yet.
I'm actually gonna stay in
Your last
Stevens Point with Colette Camerano. So we're gonna be out there.
Oh, collect.
Yeah. And just so everybody knows, for everybody out there, you know, anybody can go. So people who aren't, you know, on a committee or a board can go. And I have to tell you, the first year I went with no expectations. I was blown away. It's an incredible event, incredible amount of information. It makes you feel great. It makes you feel hopeful. It's just wonderful. I encourage people to go if they're concerned about the watershed or anything with the environment. It's just a great event. And that's why I'm going.
Remember off the top of your head, how we can tell people to look at the program.
Okay,
Agenda.
you have to go to Wisconsin. What I'll do is I will do a Facebook post for all the people who join Facebook. If Phil can do something on the 14mile.org site, We'll give you links to the Wisconsin Lakes and Rivers Convention, and then if you want to participate, and by the way, you don't have to go all 3 days. You can do piecemeal, you can do whatever you feel you want to do. You can do it half a day, just to get your feet wet. So I really encourage people to do it. It's a great, great event. And it does have an agenda when you go on the site that tells you what each session is about or what each presentation is about. So
It's virtual, it's virtual also.
it's also virtual, right? And it's a lot less expensive if you go virtual. And I did it virtual the last 2 years and it was just as good as being there in person. So
The dates are the 6th, 7th, and 8th of April.
yes, thank you.
14 Mile Alliance status, I don't think there's anything to bring up there, except that we did see that on the Tri-Lakes agenda this week. It passed a resolution a few years ago, forming the joint committee between a citizen group and Tri-Lakes and the town. And they're invalidating that.
Town already did that resolution.
The town has done that already.
It's on Trailers agenda, but this
And I'm guessing it's because we're not.
because we're not part of Trailers. Trailers,
So we're working with Tri-Lakes as a partner, but more independently.
just making it a legal separation.
Right. So it's not because they don't like us, it's because, which I would be offended. By. No, it's because they have. To. So,
Lake reports, I just will mention that, yeah, for Sherwood, I haven't opened it yet. I think Sherwood newsletter came to my mailbox today, so I put some good information in there on what's happening on Sherwood in my conservation column. And just wanted to mention again that we did get the additional fish habitat in over the easternmost southern island on the South Shore within 40 trees, 8 bundles of 5 trees. And I've got Healthy Lakes funding for 1 additional year. So planning on wrapping up kind of the saturating public land by work on Adams County South Shoreline between the harvester launch and the dam for next year, and scale back even a little bit more on just 30 trees. So good. So yeah, so when we were going gangbusters, we had 1 year where we put in 80 trees, another year 72. So 40 and 30 sounds a little more doable. So that's all I have. Anybody, Arrowhead or Camelot, have anything to share?
My wife and I met with Anna last week regarding beachfront restoration, possibly doing some plantings and things on the Westlake Center at Lake Arrowhead. So we've given Anna permission to go in there and develop a plan and we can submit it to the board at that point. So
Westlake Center.
that's really
Okay, Jerry, do you have anything either from your association with the town, county, or Tri-Lakes?
Nothing water related or like.
Okay, our next regularly scheduled meeting, if we look at the second Monday next month, would be April 11th, 2 p.m. here with the roundtable.
I like it.
Everybody okay with that?
Yeah,
Date and
I'm
time?
all for it.
I do have one report from Trailers I should have mentioned.
Oh, sure.
The soil borings were done in all 3 lakes and materials in for analysis. So hopefully we'll get some reports back here within, possibly within the next week. Just
like borings?
I did it 18, I believe.
18 borings, okay. Wonderful.
Like 6 weeks, like,
And the boards will provide a report.
yes.
And will the report have more than just the data? Will there be some analysis? I mean, who can analyze this? What's their?
Well, the lab report will be getting back.
Right.
We should be able to, we hope it's in context that we can.
Hope it doesn't-
What it is.
hope it doesn't require a lot of
We'll get
interpretation,
that
right?
totals, but they're interpreted, but. Yeah.
Wait,
I'm sure.
Vince,
Just a question, are they doing like a fractional analysis or how are they analyzing the course? Where are they looking at it in this course? I'm just curious.
Percent, just about any and all contaminants.
Okay.
That's in the water and soil. Or whole pond list. I don't have it list. All right.
What?
Well, they were, if I'm right, they were looking at utilizing some products or some processes. And some of the companies required soil borings to do the analysis to see if their product would work.
so we
So I
talking,
think, and don't ask me any more than that,
Yeah.
that's the high level I can give you.
so is it alum? Is that what they're looking at? Are they
Well,
looking at other?
They have looked at that, but that's not feasible in our lake, because
Right.
there's too much flow.
Too much flow.
Right.
So, I know that was one of the reasons. The main reason for doing was just to understand what kind of residue material we have in the bottom of the lake to generate growth, plant growth, and algae and phosphorus and so forth. It's in there already, and just we're taking it stirred up a little bit, come to the surface again. So, at least we'll have a good idea what's down there.
And I hope you take it to people who can tell us what it means, because having it down there just gives us one piece of information, but we need somebody to, and I'm guessing it's pretty complicated, to tell us what that means. Yeah. Based on the kind of lakes we have.
I'm sure we'll have that kind of report coming back.
I hope so.
Okay, sounds good. Anybody who's tuning in remotely have anything last minute?
Thank you all for
Thank you for
participating.
attending.
Thank you. for
Negative.
participating.
Okay, we can hear from Sally. Okay, with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. So moved. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next month and probably